Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. We're broadcasting from the Hesselson studio, and joining me in the Zoom version of that studio this morning, Ed White, candidate for New York State Supreme Court Justice. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Frank, for having me. I'm looking forward to the interview.
Of course, and it was such a pleasure meeting you at the Scope Dinner. How great is that Scope Dinner?
Oh, that Scope dinner is one of the best. As a Scope member, I try to attend Scope meetings as well as the functions that they have. I think it's very important. Our Bill of Rights, Second Amendment, that right is very important, as well as the Constitution and all the Bill of Rights for that matter.
Of course. And have you seen a more active group than Scope? Boy, those guys are dedicated, aren't they?
Wow. They are definitely workers, and they are very dedicated to their cause.
Yeah.
Or our cause, we should say.
Yeah, I like that. That sounds much better. So, like I said, kind of the disclaimer that I always give when I have someone running for judge, and that is I can't ask really specific questions. So we start with the easy one. Tell us a little bit about your background.
So I was born and raised in Seneca County. I'm a Seneca County resident. Been a very hard worker. I grew up, I say rural poor. Many of us know that coming from, the smaller counties. And when I was old enough, I started worked on some farms, worked in an equipment dealership. One thing I'm proud of is I went to Cayuga Community College. In fact, if I win this race, I will be the first Cayuga Community College graduate to be a Supreme Court Justice in the 7th District. People kind of, there's a lot of people out there that don't believe you can be competitive with the community college education, but I'm proof of that.
That's right.
So I really appreciate my humble beginnings.
Yeah, and it's probably with that. And then, well, let's get into your experience for this position too, because you've got your beginning, your background. But what kind of experience do you have that makes you believe that you would be the best New York State Supreme Court Justice?
Wow, experience. I've been in the Supreme Court for 28 years as an attorney, law clerk, principal law clerk to multiple judges. In fact, Judge Ark, who was a 7th District judge, when he retired a year ago this past summer, I say, kind of coming out of it now, I'm now, out of all the attorneys and judges, the senior member in the Supreme Court. In fact, the closest judge to me is 18 years, and I have 28 years. Just capitalizing on that, too, I've been in every single part of the court. In fact, when I started in the court almost 30 years ago, there was only one part in the Supreme Court, and that was commercial part. And then, the judges pretty much handled the cadre of cases that come before Supreme Court judges. There were a couple of dedicated criminal court judges at the time, but over the years I've been with the court, they've broken up the court into multiple specialty parts, I call them. There's a matrimonial part, there's a foreclosure part, there's criminal parts, a general civil part, commercial part, and at one point there was a medical malpractice part, which I worked in, but now that's been redistributed to the civil court judges.
Wow, that's a lot. 28 years, congratulations. So I was going to ask how you prepare for your role as justice, but that sounds like you might have just answered that one. So for people that don't know, let's talk a little bit about the race itself, just so that they're aware of how to vote and like that. But also, before I lead into that, to kind of segue, you are running for the 7th District. That is Cayuga, Livingston, Monroe, Ontario, Seneca, Steuben, Wayne, and Yates counties. I asked this of everybody in the 7th District. How many miles do you think you put on your car?
Oh, wow. Thousands. Tens of thousands for that matter.
Yeah.
I think I had one day where I think I did, it was Father's Day. I know the day. And I think I put on like 600 miles in one day.
Wow. It's a big district, isn't it?
Huge. 1.3 million people. It is a big district geographically, and a large number of people in that district.
And I want to talk about the campaign, but how do you campaign in a district that big?
You try to schedule a lot of events. You get out there. It's tough to do door to door. You can do a little here and there, but to get out and see that many voters is very difficult. You just travel around the circuit. You try to connect up with your constituency and the groups that are supporting you. So there's a lot of dinners and functions like that, like the Scope you mentioned. I mean, that they had some great events this year, and you try to make it out to them and meet the people.
So let's talk about the voting itself first. Just so people are aware, how is this going to work when they go either early voting or day of voting?
Okay, so for the Supreme Court 7th Judicial District, there are 2 spots, so you get to vote for 2 candidates. There are 4 people running for those 2 spots.
Okay. And it's 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats. I mean, they're on other lines too, but if we're just focusing on the main party, right? There's 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans?
That is correct. The Democrats have the Working Family Party line, and the Republicans, both of us, have the Conservative Party line as well as the Republican line.
So when this position came up, what led you to make that decision? Because it's not an easy decision. You know how much time and dedication it's going to take, not just the campaigning, but the job itself. Why did you decide to run?
Took a lot of soul searching, but talking to colleagues and friends and attorneys, it seemed like a natural progression for me to become a judge with my background.
Yeah.
I think I have a lot of support in the legal community in regard to that, since I've been around so long, and a lot of attorneys supported me making that decision. So it was pretty easy in the end. I did know the commitment because I ran Judge Alex Renzi's reelection campaign last year, and I worked for Judge Renzi. So I certainly am not shy to the campaigning. I love getting out, meeting the people throughout the district. There are some awesome people out there, and just some real Americans.
And I'm glad you said that, because I was going to ask how the campaign's going, because I know, like you said, you go to these festivals, and I've said this a million times on this program, but you really get that one-on-one with people and realize issues that you may not have realized were even issues, right? They'll tell you something, and wow, that's so eye-opening. So what are voters saying to you?
It's interesting. No matter the background of the voter, I find that, and I can't get into discussing the issues. I'll just factually state, I find people, they're definitely concerned about public safety.
Yeah.
They're definitely concerned about the economy. And most are concerned about the issues with the border. I mean, it's amazing, no matter their backgrounds, their beliefs, their understandings, etc. Everybody seems to have the same concern going into this election cycle.
It really is, and it doesn't matter what candidate we have on. Those are the 3 talking points, right? At whatever level, it's really kind of fascinating. So, how's the campaigning been going? Been a lot of fun?
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I'm enjoying it. Towards the end, you kind of get a little tired, but things are good. I have great reception out there. I've met a lot of great people. I've reconnected with a lot of great people, so I've been enjoying every minute of it.
And you say it is tiring. Of course it is. I'm not even running, and it's tiring. So what's your November 6th going to look like?
Oh, well, I have a campaign breakfast in the morning, and then after that, I'll probably try to get around and get some voters out, make sure they
On
get
5th,
to the polls.
On the 5th. I meant on the 6th. Are you going to sleep in? On the 5th, everybody get out and vote. You're thinking about the 5th because you're running.
You know what? The tough part is that's one of the tough parts about campaigning is I work a full-time job.
Yeah.
So I'll get up Wednesday and, head off like I normally do back to work. I mean, it's the difficulty when you work for someone and you're trying to campaign. They're relying on you, so you got to make sure that you're available regardless. It would be different if you're a judge or some other individual who's a supervisor over people, or you're in private practice where you have your own firm. Sometimes things may be a little more easy to schedule.
Right. And that's really interesting, because we're going to be talking with Stacey Romeo, and it's the same thing. You still have your day job. That's why I'm so fascinated how you're even able to campaign as effectively as you've been able to.
Yeah, it's definitely difficult. It really is. You hope you have a judge that's understanding that you're working for, and you take the time off. I accumulate a lot of vacation time, so you have to take off the time you have to take off to get the job done.
So much for Disney World this year. You're going to be campaigning, right?
You're right. 2 years in a row.
Yeah, there you go. You know what's interesting to me, because if you're successful, you essentially going from being very political to not political for 14 years, right? I mean, you can't do anything really at that time. You can't go to these dinners that we're talking about because of the nature of the job. Why do you think, and I don't think this will ever change, but why do you think in New York it is a Republican and Democrat thing when you as a judge are supposed to be completely impartial for 14 years?
Well, it's not, this question came up in another interview. It's not as political as people like to make it seem.
Right.
I say that even in an appointment system, there's politics in appointments.
That's true.
For all the judgeships in New York State, in fact, you don't need a Wilson Pakula, which is permission to run. You can run in any party you want to run in as a judicial candidate. You just have to get your feet on the ground, get out, get the signatures, circulate the petitions. much like Supreme Court. I mean, if I wanted to run on another party, I could simply, well, it's not so simple, but I could take and run delegates. We are selected by delegates.
Mm-hmm.
So, for Republicans and conservatives, working families, and the Democrats, what happens is during the primary season, names are submitted and these individuals run as delegates. Any individual that's a candidate or wants to be a candidate could go out and select people or ask people to be a delegate, run their delegates, and then at the convention, you get your name voted in and away you go. So, it's less political than people want to make it seem that it's fully political and each side is supported by only one philosophy or idea. That's not the case.
That's a good point. And also, I would just know, as someone that takes out petitions, those petitions are the most confusing with the delegates, because they'll go, why am I signing for 30 people here? What am I doing? And then you have to explain the whole process. So it's a unique way of doing things. So if you're looking ahead and you are elected to New York State Supreme Court, what do you think the biggest issues will be that you'll face?
Well, I've been in the courts for so long, and the same issue when I started in the courts almost 30 years ago is the same issue today. And there's a saying, justice delayed is justice denied. The courts are backed up, both criminal and civil. So I think that's something that I've dealt with over the years and will continue to deal with, trying, if I'm fortunate and get elected, trying to deal with case backlog and moving cases along, getting them to the point of either resolution or trial. I think that's very important. We have things called standard and goals in all parts of the court, and I think you need to effectively manage your calendar. I saw an increase, post-COVID.
Yeah.
So certainly those numbers have increased from what they were before COVID. So that's, I think, the biggest factor you're going to deal with.
And that's interesting. Has the courts adapted, or maybe that's not the right word, but since COVID, how have they made up for that backlog? Are they still dealing with that?
Yes, we are.
Oh my gosh.
I think it'll be years. There's different ideas. In fact, statewide, they've added judgeships to deal with some of the backlog. In fact, Hugo County, they have a family court race this year. It was an added judgeship. So they're looking throughout the state and trying to figure out where judges are needed and putting judges there. I mean, it's just getting to the grind and getting the cases done.
Now, and we just have a couple more questions here. I did want to ask, because I saw this the other day, and I guess congratulate you. This is always a weird way of bringing it up, but you got some major endorsements.
Yeah, I have strong law enforcement endorsements. I think part of the reason I was a former probation officer, so I do have a law enforcement background. I think that was one factor, but certainly appreciate all the support from the law enforcement unions. I also have the UAW and the Teamsters unions.
Wow.
That also have endorsed me, and very proud of those endorsements too.
That's unique. I mean, when you have a Republican, I know things have changed a little bit this year, but to have the Teamsters, that's got to feel good.
Yeah, it feels great. I mean, I'm really appreciative. In fact, they had their big clam bake last week, and I spent some time with the members, had a great time.
Oh, that's wonderful. Okay, so before we go, is there a place to find out more if I didn't ask all the right questions?
Ed White for SupremeCourt.com.
Okay, Ed White for SupremeCourt.com. And that's the 7th Judicial District. Again, that makes up Cayuga, Livingston, Monroe, Ontario, Seneca, Steuben, Wayne, and Yates County. In closing, what would you say to voters before they either early vote or head to the voting booth?
I would urge voters to get out and vote. Exercise your rights as an American. Get out and vote. Please get out and vote. I would ask you for your support for myself. But I would say, the important thing is getting out to vote.
Well, Ed, thanks so much for being on the program. It was a pleasure talking with you. It was good seeing you at Scope, and I hope to talk to you again soon.
Thank you, Frank. Really appreciate you taking the time with me this morning.
Of course. Best of luck. We're rooting for you.
Thank you.
All right. We'll be right back. But frankly speaking, stay with us.